Welcome back. Let's take a look out the window. This is the Wells Fargo sky cam. Certainly felt the change from the weekend to now, which means we should bring in our chief meteorologist, Matt Zaffino, to talk about El Nino and what this means for snow this winter, Matt.
Yes, El Nino. Now, remember, Pat, we're coming off 3 years in a row with La Nina, okay, which is the opposite of El Nino, and I'll explain the difference between the two. But yeah, a nice 3-year relationship with La Nina, ended up with really great mountain snowfall around Oregon and some stormy winters and storms, ice storms and snowstorms here in the valley, right? So what does it mean if we go into a El Nino winter? Well, let me explain what they are, first of all. In a normal situation, we're talking about the trade winds and the sea surface temperatures around the tropical Pacific Ocean around the equator. And you may be thinking, what in the world does the ocean temperature near the equator have to do with winter in the Northwest?
Exactly what I was wondering.
Right, and it's a fair question, so I will explain the connection there too, because it is one of the better connections we know of in the world of climate as we go through the seasons, right? So this is the normal situation. Trade winds blow along the equator. What that does is it pushes the warmest water out to the western tropical Pacific, and the eastern Pacific ends up being relatively cool. That's the normal state of things. During an El Nino, though, that changes. And also, by the way, with the normal situation, lots of warm water in the western tropical Pacific. That feeds the typhoons that grow out there that we tell you about, very strong storms. It also produces a lot of rain in places like Indonesia. But during an El Nino, the ocean temperature pattern begins to change, and the western Pacific cools off, and that warm pool, if you will, switches and moves to the central and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean. So here's the connection. What that does is it changes the location where all that warm water, warm tropical water, sends water vapor and energy and heat into the atmosphere. That in turn changes the distribution and the location of the jet stream in the winter. So that's how the tropical Pacific temperatures are related to our winter weather. It all goes back to the jet stream and where that heat and that moisture is being put up into the atmosphere. And when it's not out in the western Pacific like normal, things change. And the bottom line it boils down to is we usually end up with a really strong subtropical jet stream, which makes Southern California, Texas, all the way over to the southeast wet and cool. We end up with a split jet stream, a lot of high pressure, a lot of relatively warm winter weather, and not as many storms. So that's what we look at when we look at El Nino winters. That's the connection to the atmosphere. So let's look at what other El Ninos have done. And this is forecast to be a strong El Nino. So I looked at 4 other strong El Nino winters here in the Northwest, 72-73, 82-83, 97-98, and the last real strong one not too long ago, 2015-2016. I looked at Government Camp, Northern Oregon on Mount Hood, about 4,000 feet, Crater Lake, Southern Oregon Cascades, and higher at 6,500 feet. And both of those features, the latitude, if you will, and the elevation make a big difference as to who gets snow and how much. So for Government Camp, average snowfall throughout the entire period of record is about 267 inches. If you look at the 4 El Ninos, the 4 strong El Ninos, the average is only 162 inches, or about 60% of normal. So that, of course, indicates that we get less snow in the mountains in northern Oregon during El Nino winters like what we're expecting this year. Now, there were 4 months, skiers, where we had above average snowfall in those 4 years, so there will be periods of snowfall and heavy snowfall. So my message to skiers is, when it gets good, take advantage because it may shut down, okay? That's the message for skiers on that one. Let's look at Southern Oregon in a higher elevation spot, Crater Lake. Average snowfall there, healthy 413 inches. For the strong El Ninos, those 4 winters, the average was 460 inches, or 111% of normal. So Southern Oregon, higher elevations do quite well during El Ninos because they're tapping into that subtropical jet stream that I showed you that's focused mainly on California. 3 of the 4 strong El Ninos had well above average snowfall there. Let's look at the ski areas themselves, okay? The data isn't complete for those 4 years, but here's what we have. Average snowfall at Meadows, 442 inches. For those 2 El Nino years, one was above and one was below. For Mount Bachelor, a little bit better data. We've got 3 of those 4 El Ninos. And one of them, 82-83, was monster. Huge snowfall that year. 97-98 and 2015-2016 were lower than average. Look at Mount Ashland, though, in Southern Oregon. They did great in pretty much all of them. Only 2015-16 was close to average, but even then it was above average. So all of this tells us that higher elevations, southern Oregon likely to get a lot of snow, northern Oregon not so much. So let's summarize it this way. Warmer than average is what I'm forecasting for this winter. Average to below average snowfall from central Oregon northward, but average to above average snowfall for central Oregon southward. And Pat, I know what you're asking. I know what you're thinking. What about the valleys? Is it going to look like this, right? Well, usually we have drier and warmer winters during an El Nino. Odds of valley snow are lower than normal, not impossible, but lower, and we should have fewer big storms. So perhaps a bit of a breather from recent winters, Pat.
Sounds great. I love all that data, Matt. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Coming up next.